In the fall of 1994, in the middle of nowhere in southeastern Turkey, there was a lonely hill that nobody cared about. For centuries, local farmers had been plowing its soil. Nobody suspected what was sleeping beneath their feet. That year, a farmer's plow struck something solid, a massive, perfectly carved stone, unlike anything natural. He reported it to the authorities. That single moment changed human history forever. Klaus Schmidt was a German archaeologist with the German Archaeological Institute. The moment he first set foot on that hill in 1994, he knew. He would spend the rest of his life here. And he did, for 20 years. Until the day he died, he never truly left Göbekli Tepe. When the excavations began, what came out of the ground was beyond belief. 12,000-year-old T-shaped stone pillars, massive, precisely carved, covered in animal reliefs, snakes, foxes, lions, vultures, scorpions, every single one crafted with extraordinary skill, not in one pit, in dozens of structures. Until that moment, archaeology had a rule. A timeline everyone agreed on. Humans first settled down, then learned farming, then built villages, then organized, then only then built temples. It made sense. It was accepted as fact. Göbekli Tepe shattered that timeline completely. The people here had no farming, no domesticated animals, no permanent settlement. They were still hunter-gatherers, and yet, 12,000 years ago, they built a massive sacred complex out of stone, from scratch. The largest pillars stand up to 20 feet tall and weigh up to 20 tons each. Every single one was quarried from nearby rock and transported here. No cranes, no wheels, no metal tools, only human hands and stone.
The math is staggering. To build these structures, hundreds, possibly thousands of people had to work in perfect coordination at the same time. But in that era, humans lived in small scattered bands. So who brought them all together? Who organized this?
The animal carvings on the pillars are not random. Specific animals appear in specific positions in specific structures, repeating patterns across the entire site. Researchers believe this is a language, a symbol system, one that nobody has cracked yet. Some researchers have found something even more unsettling. Certain pillars appear to align with specific star clusters. If that's true, these people had a working knowledge of astronomy 12,000 years ago, and they encoded it into stone. Six large circular enclosures at Göbekli Tepe have been fully excavated so far, but geomagnetic and ground-penetrating radar surveys reveal the truth. There are more than 20 structures still buried underground, still waiting. What we know is just a fraction of what exists.
But here's the question that haunts every researcher who studies this place. Around 10,000 years ago, the people who used Göbekli Tepe deliberately buried it. They filled the structures with stones, dirt, and rubble. They sealed it. Why?
They didn't destroy the temples. They didn't burn them. They didn't simply abandon them. They carefully, deliberately buried them, as if preserving something, or perhaps ending something. This intentional burial remains one of the most unexplained behaviors in the entire history of archaeology. Consider what else existed in the world at that time. The Egyptian pyramids wouldn't be built for another 7,000 years. Stonehenge was 6,000 years away. The Sumerian civilization wouldn't emerge for 5,000 more years. Göbekli Tepe predates all of them by thousands of years. Writing hadn't been invented. Pottery didn't exist. Nobody had discovered metalworking. At one of the most primitive moments in human history, these people built something the world still cannot fully explain. Schmidt was always emphatic about one thing. Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement. Nobody lived here. There is zero evidence of daily life. No hearths, no trash, no kitchen tools, no sleeping areas. Nothing. This place was used exclusively for ceremonies. People traveled from distant regions to gather here. They performed rituals. They feasted together. Then they dispersed and went home. Göbekli Tepe was the world's first known pilgrimage site. 12,000 years ago. Thousands of animal bones were found surrounding the structures. Gazelle, wild donkey, aurochs, wild boar, all butchered and consumed on this hill. Researchers estimate that during major ceremonies, hundreds, possibly thousands, of people gathered here at once. And this is where a staggering idea emerges. To feed that many people, you need a massive, reliable food supply. That pressure, feeding pilgrims, may have driven humans to start farming. In other words, the temple didn't come after agriculture. The temple may have created agriculture. If this theory is correct, the agricultural revolution, the single most transformative event in human history, was not driven by economic necessity. It was driven by religion. People learned to farm so they could feed the crowds coming to worship. That changes everything we thought we knew. Klaus Schmidt and several other researchers put forward a controversial theory. The geographic location of Göbekli Tepe, sitting at the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, matches the biblical description of the Garden of Eden. Coincidence? Or is this humanity's oldest collective memory, encoded in myth? The theory is debated in academic circles, but one thing is undeniable. Göbekli Tepe sits exactly where civilization began, built at exactly the moment when the prehistoric human mind was transforming. Maybe paradise was not a place. Maybe it was a moment, and maybe that moment happened on this hill. Here's something that will keep you up at night. Göbekli Tepe was actually discovered in 1963. A joint survey by the University of Istanbul and the University of Chicago sent archaeologist Peter Benedict to the site. He examined it, he filed a report, and in that report he wrote just 2 words: medieval cemetery, unremarkable. Benedict had seen those massive carved pillars. He had walked right past them. But in 1963, no archaeologist could conceive that hunter-gatherers were capable of building something like this. Their minds were closed to the possibility. And so, Göbekli Tepe waited under the feet of farmers for 30 more years. In 2021, excavations at Karahan Tepe, a sister site just miles away, produced something that stunned the archaeological world. Alongside a hyper-realistic human figure seated on an animal, researchers found phallic symbols carved into the structure. 11,000 years old, the oldest known representation of human sexuality in history. Nobody had imagined that death and rebirth rituals extended this far back. What this tells us is profound. These people were not simply surviving. They were thinking about the meaning of life, about death, about birth, about cycles. 11,000 years ago, in a stone room, they were asking the exact same questions we still ask today. In 2021, a sweeping new initiative launched around Göbekli Tepe, the Tastepeler Stone Hills Project. Within a 200-kilometer radius, 12 contemporaneous archaeological sites were identified. Karahan Tepe, Harbetsuvan, Gurku Tepe, and others still being uncovered. As each site is excavated, the picture becomes more extraordinary. Human head sculptures at Karahan Tepe, elaborate relief carvings at Sayburg. Every site is different, but all are part of the same culture. Göbekli Tepe was not alone. 12,000 years ago, a vast civilization existed here.
The carvings at Sayburg are even more detailed than those at Göbekli Tepe. They depict a scene, human figures alongside a snake and a leopard, a ritual, a myth, a historical record. Nobody knows. But 11,000 years ago, someone spent hours carving this scene into stone because it mattered.
Some researchers believe a portion of the symbols carved into the pillars may be proto-writing, an early attempt to record information in permanent form. If true, the history of writing must be pushed back thousands of years earlier than we thought. Everything changes again. Klaus Schmidt died in 2014. He directed excavations here for 20 years. He never solved the mystery of Göbekli Tepe. In his final interviews, he said, "The more answers we find, the more questions appear. This hill never ends." Excavations continue today. Every season brings new findings, and every new finding shakes what we thought we knew. 95% of Göbekli Tepe is still underground. The real surprises may not have arrived yet. In 2018, Göbekli Tepe was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Hundreds of thousands of visitors come every year. But archaeologists agree on one thing: the greatest discoveries here have not been made yet. Ground-penetrating radar shows anomalies at even deeper levels. Structures that don't match what's already been found. Perhaps beneath Göbekli Tepe lies something older. 15,000 years, maybe more, nobody knows. If you stood on this hill right now, you'd see nothing remarkable: dirt, stone, wind, a lonely hilltop in the middle of Turkey. But 12,000 years of human mystery lie beneath your feet. The story of how we first felt human, how we first gathered, how we first looked up at the stars and asked why. And perhaps the deepest question isn't about the stones. It's this: who did they build it for? For themselves? For their gods? Or for us? Did they bury it knowing that one day, thousands of years later, someone would come and find it? Göbekli Tepe tells us something fundamental about what it means to be human. 12,000 years ago or today, we search for meaning. The people who carved these stones with bare hands and primitive tools on a hilltop in ancient Turkey were not so different from us. They wondered, they questioned, they believed. And those questions, that wonder, that faith, are still carved into the stone beneath the earth, waiting. They have been waiting for 12,000 years. We don't know exactly what Göbekli Tepe was. We don't know who built it. We don't know why they buried it. We don't know what the symbols mean. But we know this: these people existed. They created something extraordinary, and that something waited 12,000 years until we came and found it. There's a saying in archaeology: the most important discovery is always the one you haven't made yet. At Göbekli Tepe, every day is a new excavation, and every day human history has a chance to be rewritten.